The Circus, an American Fantasy by Foreman. Chapter 2. The Circus. Sounds in the dark, in through the haze. The subtle roar of the crowd, a rainbow of tone. The clop of feet, hundreds upon the dirt. Buzzers, bells, and whistles, racket for racket's sake. A dog's short, sharp bark, shattering glass. Grown men laughing, a child crying. Some suckling noise. Music. Horns, cymbals, strings, the entry of the gladiators. And what was that wonderful smell? Was that cotton candy? Yes, but there was more. Something coppery, thick. It was caked onto her face. Dried syrup, she thought. I fell asleep in the pancakes or something? Explains the headache. Penny kicked, swimming up through the backs of her eyes, past the lids, and breached the shores of consciousness. A few blinks cleared her fuzzy vision, revealing a dozen folks meandering around her, leaving their empty footprints in the dirt and blood. The blood? Yes, her blood, and a lot of it. 3 or 4 yards of a red soaked into the dirt she laid face down upon. Oh, Jesus Christ, what'd I do this time? Penny palmed the ground, pushed, rose slowly to her hands and knees. Her arms wiggled, strong as wet noodles. She locked herself that way, breathing deep through the nose and out through the mouth. Penny knew it wasn't the part of the program where she stood up, unless she wanted to wind up on her face again. Her lungs rattled with a decade and a half of lung butter, and greenish-brown chunks of phlegm peppered the ground between her hands as she coughed them up and spat them out. The moist pile was nearly 8 inches wide when Penny finished. It was easier to breathe without that ticklish wheeze in her chest. She put out her first word. Help. Her insides shriveled. As a rule, she didn't care for help. When people offered, they always fucked it up. And if she asked, the answer was a resounding failure. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Help. Louder now. The shoes and boots shuffled on. Her effort scraped up more phlegm from the walls of her lungs. She coughed up one more batch of the goopy chunks, then spat them out and managed a weak yell. Hey, please. She waited patiently. Someone was bound to notice her, to say something. A sneaker came heel down on Penny's right hand. She pulled away her hand, but caught herself on her forearm before she fell. Most of her wrist and elbow slid through the warm phlegm as she did. What the fuck is wrong with you? She screamed. Loudest yet, a screech tore at her throat like cat claws. Fucking help me, you assholes, please! I'm hurt! A different man looked down as he walked past, frowning at her. Penny barely caught his face before he was long gone in the crowd, but really did she expect otherwise? Helping hands were far and few between, and those that Penny found before tended to catch fire when they touched her, for better or worse. As far as she was concerned, this was just a little better than par for the course. At least no one kicked her teeth in. Yet. Well then, fuck those guys. Penny could take care of herself, which meant figuring out what happened. Looking herself over again, nothing immediately indicated how she bled out. Her left hand was fine, not a muscleless, bony tree, and her skin hadn't been ripped apart by billions of neon-flashing teeth. I tripped, she thought. That's right, I ran, I tripped, I hit that rock. Bad trip. Great, but where was she now? There was an easy way to find out. Penny patted her front right pocket, one designated exclusively for her phone while out and about. The phone was missing, but she found a dry string of obscenities that she let out to air. It wasn't in the front left pocket either, though her smokes and lighter were, for which she was thankful. Penny never put anything in her back pockets, so she didn't bother. She put her arm down. There was no way to personally contact anyone to help her, nor a mirror to inspect the damage, nor access to the internet and her handy-dandy Google Maps. Radical, she thought, slapping her forehead. That's some grade-A hot shit. Fucking God! She shrieked. A simple, disappointed facepalm rode full-bore apocalypse into her life. Penny collapsed to her left, the impact driving the pain deeper. The blinding strings of pain pulled on her like a puppet. Her arms contracted and quivered at her sides, one leg pulled halfway to the fetal position, the other extended and shaking as if with palsy. Penny's breath and heart were shallow and quick. her body one large, cold spasm. Tongue dry and palms sweaty, she did the only thing she could: confront it, deal with it, live through it. She faced upwards, towards the stars and the clouds, put every ounce of her attention and focus into looking at them, and couldn't. Not yet. Tears kept it too blurry, the impenetrable agony separating her and everything else above her. Slowly, the terrible burn dulled to a simmer in face of her willful effort. The tears slowed, dwindled, stopped. A phrase from a Tool song slipped through her mind, something about pain being an illusion. This was not true, but pretending so certainly helped. Not a soul stopped to ask if she was all right. Somehow that felt worse than face-palming her own injury. Before now, she had seen nothing but the ground, the blood, her hands, strange shoes, distant faces. Now, as the pain faded, she looked up into the great infinite cosmos of stars through a curtain of clouds. Those clouds, fluffy, buoyant things of a million shapes, reflected the myriad rainbow lights adorning the buildings that circled the very edges of Penny's vision. It was the kind of odd scene you expected to see hanging in a fancy museum painted in oil by... Well, she didn't know her oil painters by name, but someone good. The guy with the melting clocks, maybe. Her eyes rolled around above the heads of the passers-by, saw hundreds of buildings, booths, and stalls in all shapes, sizes, and colors. Lights danced along the edges of the buildings, around the neon signs, trailing crisscross on wires overhead the folks walking around her. And that song, she thought. It had been playing the whole time, but she only now realized it. What was the name? Tim had told her once, years before, but it eluded her. It felt important to know at the time. What was it? Entry of the Gladiators! She didn't mean to speak, but the words caught wind and carried themselves. The notes, the horns, the cymbals pulled her up, floated her to her feet, the pain in her face present, but below her, less important, a peasant to her highness. Upright and erect, the music swept her in a gentle circle, gape-jawed as she looked at the booths, the buildings twirling slowly about. Some were tall brick-and-mortar constructions that, over time, became drunk and sagged to one side or another. Others were squat, short, wooden structures resembling log cabins. A 4-story place over on the corner looked like Dr. Seuss gave up drawing and took up architecture. It was balanced on only 3 stilts, each as thick as a baseball bat, hovering above a horse stable. Packed between them in every nook and cranny was a small tent, booth, stand, stall, you name it, she saw it. All those places, large and small alike, were crowded with long lines, those waiting their turn smoking cigarettes, laughing, shouting, throwing playful punches. Covering every surface available, along the buildings and stalls were a million signs, flashing bright and in time with the march of the entry of the gladiators. Skee-ball, one sign flashed green. Whack-a-mole, said another in pink. Corn dogs, psychics, ring the bottle, cotton candy, peanuts, the love tunnel. Between the signs, with what space was left on the walls of the buildings around her, were a great many speakers that looked like bicycle horns, a dozen at least in view at once. From these the piano and cymbals came galloping, but it was not Entry of the Gladiators as she thought. It was a clone, near identical, but minus the soft bridges and carrying moments deep into the song, the parts Penny thought sucked eggs and swallowed shells. What she heard now was only the upbeat march, a constant forward motion conveyed by sound alone, the sonic representation of conquering and continuing. It was then, in the face of the not-quite gladiators, that she knew where she was. Heaven. Heaven! Of course, it made sense now. Of course no one would stop to help an injured woman. She was in fucking heaven. She'd be just fine. Oh, God, she said. The pain was overshadowed completely. Oh, Tim, I made it. Penny died in the desert, and she went to heaven. How was that even possible? She was an atheist, for Christ's sake, and heaven was a fucking circus. Wait, where was Tim? If this was heaven, he ought to have been here, right? If a ragged little shit like Penny could squeak her way in, there was no way Tim could have been rejected. For 10 years, Penny hoped that Tim survived the wreck, that he'd pop in unexpectedly on some idle Tuesday, and they'd run away with the traveling acts. Statistical probability suggested it was more unlikely than getting head from Kirsten Dunst, but Penny hoped anyway. Now, it didn't matter. If Tim was dead, she could meet him here in this beautiful, wonderful place of lights and sound, and they could open their own sideshow, make cotton candy, carve out their own chunk of the capitalist pork pie, and deep fry the shit out of it. Penny had taken a few lost, meandering steps, eyes high and hungry for the lights. She tracked through the blood and phlegm but didn't notice. From head to toe, the pulse of her heart thrummed with the music. She'd tripped acid, shrooms, DMT, and dram to start the list, and she'd had plenty good sex. But no drug, no fermented fruit or forbidden chemical or sexual thrill could match this. She'd tripped before, but now she tripped on a woman. Penny kept her feet with pinwheeling arms, then turned to apologize. Oh, shit, I'm so sorry, The lady, a redhead, was perched on her knees in the middle of the road. The woman wore a plaid button-up, of which all buttons were undone. Her freckled breasts hung out in the air between the curtains of her shirt. The redhead said something. Penny saw her lips flapping, but caught none of it. She stared at the redhead's face, at the drool dripping off the delicate, pointed chin and down to her chest. The woman again said something, and it went right over Penny's head. She'd seen the man next to the redhead on his feet, pants and whitey-tidies hanging around his knees. His meaty spear was clenched in the kneeling redhead's right hand, pelvis bucking with each of her strokes that, despite Penny stumbling on her, kept exact pace. "Excuse me." The redhead's whine finally broke through. "Could you please watch where you're going? I'm working here." She nodded towards the penis. Penny couldn't find a word, so the redhead dismissed her with a wave of her spit-covered hand, then took the man's entire corn dog and shoved it down her throat. The man moaned, twitched, told her not to stop, that he was almost done. Don't stop. Penny was speechless. The absurdity cubed itself in volume when she saw those two public lovers had matching tattoos on their foreheads, 58% on hers and 19% on his. Penny was fairly sure she'd know how a computer felt when it crashed. She yearned for a restart button on life, to open administrator mode and eliminate whatever virus came to piss in her cereal that morning. Yeah, the man grunted, faster and faster. Yeah, baby, oh God! He made a noise, somewhere between a scream and a whoop, knees bent and quivering. The redhead spat the white drizzle into the dirt to her side, then pulled the cuff of her right sleeve to wipe the remaining seed from her bottom lip. Penny couldn't turn away in time. She doubled over, one arm clutching her cartwheeling stomach, the other on her knee for support. Her mouth soured, filled with saliva that dripped as she gagged once, twice, but she kept it down. "Whew, God!" the man cried. Penny heard his zipper close. "Best fucking contract I ever signed." Contracts? Penny thought. Hookers are on contracts now? In fucking heaven? Hell must have frozen over. Her heart slipped the tempo. Either hell froze over, or Satan liked the carnival a bit too much. Oh, she thought. Oh, fuck, that's not good at all. The man disappeared in the crowd. As soon as he'd taken his first step, the redhead flung herself back on the market by grabbing the next closest man's shoulder that passed by. "Hey, handsome," she said, words heavy with a southern drawl Penny had missed before. "Let me play?" The man slapped her hand away, and he kept walking. She took 2 steps forward, found another man. She grabbed his hand and put it on her breast. "You like it, huh?" But he passed on too. She scanned the crowd, saw Penny staring. If she remembered Penny tripping on her, it didn't show. In an instant, the woman had one hand on Penny's chest, bloody shirt and all. "Well, good evening, love." Penny shook her head frantically, the pain of her injury exploding through her face like Yellowstone 1,000 years late. She pushed the woman's hand away, but the other flew in around Penny's hip. "Fucking excuse me!" Penny shouted, shoving her off. The redhead kept back, but wouldn't dismiss her. "Come on, lady. Look, I ain't gay. I ain't even saying you're gay, but I gotta get home before my mom finds out and—" "Fuck off!" Penny screamed, one arm extended. "Fuck off, all right?" The redhead shrugged, dropping her faux persona on a dime. "Good luck," she said cryptically. Without hesitation, she turned away and reached for the nearest passerby, another man. "Ever had a ginger, do you?" And just like that, Penny faded from the woman's reality. She was off in the crowd, flashing herself and shoving her hands about until she found purchase. Automatically, Penny's head cranked left and right. left and right, refuting the evidence laid before her. Penny ran the scene through her mind again, rewinding through like an old videotape, scanning it for any sense of reason or trace of sanity. There was a woman with 58% tattooed on her head, blowing a dude who also had a percentage tattooed on his face, in the middle of the street with God and the children watching because it was in a fucking contract. Then she proceeded to offer herself to an injured, filthy woman who smelled and looked like a slaughterhouse. Not exactly the type of stuff you find in the scenic heaven travel pamphlet, ladies and gentlemen. Shit, not in heaven or hell. So what the actual fuck did Penny just see? She didn't know, but she needed a second opinion. She tried earlier, and no one stopped at her meager cries for help. It felt pointless that she needed validation from another human, confirmation on a fact even if she'd observed it. Worse, it felt cruel because asking for help and validation always ended in failure. Still, that didn't matter. Right now, she needed something, some confirmation, some outside say on why nobody gave half a crap about what just happened. Penny herself didn't give a shit about public sex, had participated herself even, but nobody cared? No one stopped them? Hell, no one even pulled out their phone to record them? Was Penny insane? Or the circus dwellers around her? She needed to speak, to scream to someone, anyone, to get some feedback from the world, an easily digestible single unit yes or no, right or wrong, up or fucking down answer from someone. Penny picked a booth, started its direction, and stopped quick like her power cord was yanked. One of the three men working the nearby corn dog stand, Mike Dogs, the sign proclaimed in glorious neon blue, sat on break, a belt loop wrapped around his left arm, its end clenched between his teeth as he found a pulsing vein for his needle. 3 feet to his right, a co-worker of his reached into his pants, scratched his nuts, then handed a pen to the first guy in line. Penny picked another direction. She swung that way, and saw a boy and, she assumed, his mother. The mother held the boy's upper arm tight enough for tendons to bulge in her wrist. In her other hand was a large purse, flailing up and down on her child like it was the hottest thing. She brought it across his face, a metal clip on its side, cutting his cheek through to the teeth. "Spend your percent on candy, Donnie," the mother roared. "And we're gonna go to the big top and you spend it on candy?" Blood gushed from the child's crooked nose, and the circus goers, Penny included, did not interfere. The mother snatched her son by the hair and walked away, dragging his heels through the dirt. Donnie did not lose consciousness. Penny almost wished he had, bad as he looked, bad as he sounded. Penny was shoved aside by a few clowns playing with balloons and horns and fake exploding cigars. When they passed, Donnie and his mother were gone. Penny felt some painful thrumming inside her chest when she put her back to that kid's situation. Plenty of people did that shit to her. But Donnie wasn't her problem. She followed the clowns instead, shouting, Hey, you, I need help." Penny halted when it was clear they ignored her. They tromped ahead, unimpeded, a dozen or so yards down the street where they rounded up a group of young children, no older than 6, and held a small show for them on the corner. The kids clapped and cheered for their balloons, each one filthy and most of them without shoes. Their foreheads were smeared with something black, soot maybe, but Penny was too far to tell. When each took their balloon, the clowns gave them a little booklet to, draw a picture in for the clowns to keep? Penny didn't know. Wasn't sure she wanted to. She had an idea. "Hey," she shouted. "Yo, clowns! A lady was hitting her child over there. There's a fucking child beater over there." The clowns clowned, unfazed. "Oh, fuck y'all." Penny turned and found herself standing in front of the first of 2 XXX interactive bars she could see on this street. Strippers danced behind windows lined with steel rods. One establishment had a sign that promised to see you next Tuesday. The other had a much ruder, hastily made ad, now supporting weird fetishes, just 1%. She turned again and saw something else, something magnificent. Towering above the stalls for games, attractions, buildings, and the like, spinning slowly against the night sky and sparkling in a plethora of flashing colors, was a magnificent Ferris wheel. It was hazy, as if far off in the distance, and if it dominated the sky, as it did, and was that far off, which it was, the thing must have been massive, hundreds, if not thousands of feet tall. Opposite it, commanding the other side of the skyline, was the roller coaster, whose track could have gone on for 10,000 miles in loops, turns, twists, and corkscrews. A woman ran down the street, shoving Penny to the side, amplifying the headache, arms stiff in front of her. The woman screamed, "She's a clown! She's a clown now!" without end. She ran past a barber shop on the corner, red, white, and blue spinning pole included. A quartet out front sung some bullshit, but was drowned out by the not-quite gladiators. Crystal Magic, a sign pronounced in teal neon just next door to the barber. They promised the cleanest meth in the circus, just 1%. Out front, a young boy poked a dead rat with a stick. There was a dog behind the boy, chewing on a severed hand. Behind her, the clowns erupted in squealing laughter. Penny turned to find them painting a naked man's face for some reason. A joke, perhaps, one she couldn't seem to fathom. The building behind them had a large red neon sign that flashed, "Live decapitation every night, just 1%. Penny's heart rate blew through the roof. She covered her mouth with a shaking hand, the Congo drums in her chest with the other. "What?" she asked, but was robbed of breath. She felt too tall, wanted to tip and crash. Her head was too light and too heavy all at once. This couldn't be happening. None of this made sense. This wasn't heaven. This wasn't hell. Fuck, there wasn't a way to tell for sure if she was dead or not. "Breathe, buddy," she thought. "Just breathe." Right. Breathe. In, out. Breathing always helped. Tim taught her that. In, out. Nothing was made better, but it wasn't as bad as it had been either. Right. 2 cheers. Tim knew it all. Hooray, hooray. But hold the applause. She wasn't out of the woods yet. Now what was the most pressing issue? Currently, the head injury. Dead or not, pain was pain, and it was always a distraction at best, regardless of what Toole thought about it. And, if she had died, Penny didn't want to do it again. This place frightened her. She was not curious about what waited further down the rabbit hole when she died a second time. Penny needed a doctor. She needed to get moving, find someone to stitch her up, dope her up on painkillers, morphine, Xannies, forget the redhead and live decapitations. "Excuse me." A man before her, taller than Penny, had a hand out and open in cautious test. He wore shaggy brown hair combed back and tight to his skull, a leather jacket over a dirty, sweat-stained white tee, and blue jeans. He reminded Penny of whoever Travolta played in Grease, only if John took a cue from the local hookers and got a percentage tattooed on his forehead, 3% in this case. Did everyone have a tattoo on their head? A quick glance of the eyes confirmed her anxiety. She frowned. "Oh, fuck, do I have one?" "Excuse me," he said again. The posture about him, shoulders withdrawn but head cocked, curious, suggested he'd asked several times now. Seeing that he had her attention, he flashed a hesitant smile. "You okay, lady?" "Does it look like I'm okay?" Mr. 3% held up 2 hands, palms out, defensive. "Hey, whoa, I'm sorry. I just figured, you know, you're new around here, I take it." He offered a minute gesture to the buildings, the neon, the people flooding around them. Penny nodded. "Where's here?" "Here's where you go when you get the shit end of the stick." He smiled, dropped one hand, and held out the other. "Welcome to the circus, my friend. I'm James." Penny squinted at him. This had bad news written all over it. But then again, what didn't right now? Being that Mr. 3% hadn't shoved Penny or betrayed her yet, he was her best shot at finding a doctor. She got her hand halfway up before the so-called James pulled his back, frowning. "Oh, you're... oh." He laughed, then grabbed and shook. "Got more blood on you than I thought, sorry. Get you washed up, what do you say? There's a bathroom just down there." Penny dropped his hand. She didn't trust his name was James. Not yet. This could be a ploy to take what's left from the injured. She'd seen this pattern before. "I don't need a bathroom," she said. "I need a doctor." But it wasn't entirely true. She needed to take a piss, but that could wait for a doctor. Mr. 3% shrugged. "You'll be fine." "Excuse me?" Penny said, her eyes a confused blur of flutters. "I got so much blood on me, excuse me, enough of my blood on me, that you didn't want to touch me, but I'll be fine? How about you suck my dick, James?" Sorry. His hands were up again, palms forward. "What do you want?" Penny hissed. her fists clenched up, hands raised just so slightly. The guy was a wuss, but better safe than sorry. Mr. 3% flaunted his wussiness, saw her ready to pose, and took 2 steps back. Smart man. I just want to help you, he pled. I swear it. Don't bullshit me. I've had a bad fucking day, I'll tell you what, so don't bullshit me. I'm not joking, he said. Penny saw his chest expanding, deflating, repeating rapidly, but he kept the dialogue smooth. Be reasonable. I can tell you're new around here. Probably just got here, right? Penny remained silent, motionless, teeth clenched at the pain cutting through her skull. Others in the circus passed around them, occupying the space, but ghosts all the same. I don't know where home is for you, the so-called James continued, but I'm sure this ain't nothing like it, right? I saw you up and wandering, staring in that brief exchange with the hooker. You died and woke up in methed-out Wonderlands, didn't you? He smiled. You ain't walked away or decked me yet, so I'm guessing I caught it on the nose. Now these guys... He made a wide circle with one hand, gesturing to those that passed by. I don't know what their problem is. None of them want to leave, to go home. They wander around this shit show, cramming their soul into the pitch-till-you-win booze or the nearest moist hole. I can tell you, I swear to God, all I want to do is the exact opposite. I want to walk in my house, pet my dog, eat my food that I'll cook, sleep in my bed, and fuck my wife. Something tells me that that's what you want too, right? I'll fuck your wife for you if you don't get to the point, Penny thought. She clipped the idea and offered instead, close enough. What's this got to do with the doctor? Fair, I'm getting to it. But I need to make this clear. I don't want to hurt you. Mr. 3% put a hand over his heart. I promise that I do not want to hurt you. You're scared, and you really look like you could use a pointer or two. So let's get you cleaned up, okay? The bathroom... I've already decided not to kick the shit out of you, Penny said. Unless you want me to reconsider, point me to the nearest doctor. Now. You... The man frowned, scratching his upper cheek. Look, being new, I figure you don't know the, He shook his head. Shit, how do I put this? The quirks of the medical care around here. If you don't need to go, don't. Trust me on this one. Look, all that blood on you, that's a lot, but it hasn't killed you, right? And back there, wherever you were before I saw you, there must have been a lot of blood there too, like a lot, right? He nodded with confidence and a stupid smile. And you're not bleeding anymore, because you'd be wiping that shit out of your eyes if you were. But you're still standing. You're talking, breathing, making a conscious effort not to hurt me, right? Does that make sense? Penny sighed. It might, she said. Mr. 3% clapped once, softly. Good. So, you're clearly not in any immediate danger. You aren't going to die right now because of the injury itself. But ask this. What would be a bitch on you? Letting that thing get infected, that's what. He clicked his tongue 3 times. So close to your brain, infection could get real bad real quick. Next thing you know, your brain's on fire, your body's frozen, and you're stuck with pus dripping out your face for God knows how long. You need to sterilize that thing ASAP. You want to go to a doctor after that? Fine by me. I'll point you the right way, free of charge. Scout's honor. But for your own sake and safety, please just get yourself washed up. He took another step back and bowed slightly, hands out as always. That's it. I'm off my soapbox. Walk away, knock my teeth in, or follow me to the bathroom. Your choice. Penny broke her gaze, scanned the walking ghosts. Some looked at her, at Mr. 3%, but truly saw neither. Here was one guy among them, stopping, claiming that he wanted to help. He's lying to you. But he told her his name, James. It sounded genuine. Giving a false name isn't that hard, dipshit. He made a good point about the infection. You're begging for a knife in the back. You're playing with a loaded gun. You know better. She had to take a piss. God damn it. My name's Penny, she said. Where's the bathroom? Hello there. Thank you for listening through Chapter 2 of my book, The Circus, An American Fantasy. The rest of the book is available for purchase if you don't want to wait for me to record all of these various different chapters and slap them up on YouTube. So yeah, please, if you want to, go ahead and check the description. You'll be able to find a link over to that. You can also find a link to my other books that I have. I have Portraits and Bloodlines, which is a bunch of short stories, half of which I wrote. The other half were written by my father, Rick Foreman. I also have 666, or A Play About Stones and How to Carry Them. That is a tragic comedy in 6 scenes, a little fun stage play that I wrote not too long ago. In any case, again, thank you for being here. I do appreciate that. If you want to, go check out some of my other videos. I talk about books. I love books. We talk about tons of books here. We also talk about some movies and stuff. We have a real fun time on this channel. Thank you again for staying, and you have yourself a good one.